Welcome today to today's Brown Bag Lunch. Thanks for coming. It's sponsored by the Gender Equity Initiative and the ABAA, and we really appreciate you coming in the middle of the day, a work day, to come and listen to what we're talking about. It's going to be a great one today, so I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and they're going to go right from there. Today we have Garrett Scott of Garrett Scott Bookseller, Rebecca Romney of Type Punch Matrix, Walnut Street Paper, Alexis and George Sirrakos, and Rebecca Baumann, head of Curatorial Services and Curator of Modern Books, Associate Librarian at the Lilly Library, University of Indiana. Take it away, Garrett.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
wait,
a quick,
before you start, Garrett, sorry, I just want to tell
of
people
course,
if you have questions, just leave them in the chat and we will definitely get to them at the end. We will try the hardest to get to all your questions. I know everybody's really excited about this one. So just put them down in the chat and we will definitely see them, get to them, and try to answer or talk to you about what we're talking about. Go ahead, Garrett.
Lizzie, do you want us to do a quick roundabout of quick introductions from each of
Yeah,
us first and then jump
fabulous.
into
That'd be
my dog
great.
and pony? Great.
That'd be great. Thank
I'm
you.
Garrett Scott, been selling books since 1991 when I got a job with an ABA bookseller, John Crichton, at the Brick Row Bookshop in San Francisco. Unfortunately, I'm fit for nothing else at this point. I went out on my own in 1998 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, as a Garrett Scott bookseller. I do mostly the paper residue of the weird 19th century American century, with books on typography as well. So it's bookselling is what I do, and I want to see other people succeed as well. So I've been with CABS since I was invited to be the specialty dealer in 2015, and I've been on the faculty since 2016. And this year I am directing the seminar. So I'm happy to do what I can to answer questions about what it is we try to do at CABS Minnesota, and to just kind of do what I can to encourage people to come along and join what it is we're doing. Why don't I toss it over to Rebecca Romney?
We're going to have that problem, as Rebecca and I often do. I'm Rebecca Romney. I started in the rare book trade with Baumann Rare Books, was hired by them in 2007 as part of the cohort that opened up their gallery in Las Vegas, where I became the manager for a number of years before relocating to the East Coast. I later joined fellow Baumann alumna Heather O'Donnell, Honey and Wax Booksellers, where I co-founded with Heather the Honey and Wax Book Collecting Prize. We are in our ninth year? Heather can correct me, ninth year, I think. We'll be opening that up for submissions soon. And in 2019, I co-founded Type Punch Matrix with Brian Cassidy, who is a former CABS, ninth, Heather says, thank you. Brian Cassidy was a former faculty member of CABS as well. We founded Type Punch Matrix here in Washington, D.C. We are what I call generalists with particular specialties. Brian is much more counterculture, modern avant-garde. I handle a lot of material, say more genre fiction. The romance novel is one of my specialties. And I also do quite a bit with the classical tradition, ancient Greece and Rome, based on my background, and Japanese literature. And yeah, I was a CABS alumna from 2017. That was my first year with Honey and Wax. I went there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when we get into more meat about how meaningful that was for me. But I joined the faculty in 2023 and I teach business basics. I teach marketing. I co-teach the collecting part with Heather. And I will be taking on the security lecture this coming summer. Should we move to Rebecca Baumann?
Go for it.
Sure. And please feel free to call me the other Rebecca to avoid confusion. Let's see. I've been a professional librarian for 13 years. I've been at the Lilly Library at Indiana University that whole time, which, if you aren't familiar with the Lilly, is an incredibly large and prestigious library almost as big as buying a key, but we're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the United States. But we have so much amazing stuff. You might be asking why Librarian is here. I went to CABS last year, and it was a amazing, transformative, life-changing experience. Not that I'm going to, change jobs into book selling. I wish sometimes I could, but because it has, I hope, helped me put me in a position to continue to foster conversations between the institutional side of things and the trade, which I think are so, so, so vital to our shared mission of preserving and sharing books and manuscripts. The Lilly Library has always had this really strong relationship with the trade. Our first director was the legendary Dave Randall, and all of our directors since up to our current director, Joel Silver, have been very kind of in love with the antiquarian book trade. And I've sort of inherited that myself. So it's I just think it's we do so much better work together, and when we understand each other's goals and shared dreams and visions. So I am excited to answer any questions and to tell every curator out there and librarian who has any kind of contact with the trade that they should consider CABS at some point. Oh, I guess I should bounce it to we'll bounce it to the walnuts and let you decide.
I'll start if that's okay, George. My name is Alexis Sirrakos, and I am the co-owner of Walnut Tree Paper. George and I are married, actually. So, hi, honey, but we're in two different locations right now. We started Walnut Tree Paper in 2019, but we were kind of attempting to sell books for about a year or two before that. Um, we do mostly visually interesting items, posters, ephemera. My favorite things are more children's illustrated classics, sci-fi fantasy. I like posters and ephemera about women's rights, environmental rights, things like that. CABS alum from 2019. If you notice, we started our business the same year that we went to CABS, or I went to CABS. I sort of jumped on the bandwagon right after. I was like, this is for me, and just sort of decided to be a bookseller. I can't wait to talk more about my experience there. I guess pre doing this whole wonderful business, I was a teacher and a stay-at-home mom. So that's me. George, your turn.
Thanks, Lex. Hi, folks. George Sirrakos, the other co-owner of Walnut Street Paper, and thanks to for having us here. Like Alexis said, we started kind of in like 2019. I'm a CABS alum. I first time I went was in 2022, but I only made it about 2 days before getting COVID, and then shuttling back home. And so I knew I'd have to go back. And so I had the privilege to be able to attend again in 2024, this past summer, with Rebecca Baumann in the table right over from ours over at CABS. I'm not I don't have any sort of like, I wasn't like part of like any sort of book selling tradition. I didn't work for any bookseller before that. My background is in education, so I was a science teacher for many years, and currently I'm a professor of secondary education at Kutztown University, and so I sort of help kind of Alexis in a more of like a part-time capacity. But what really drew me to bookselling was that I was able to use a lot of the skills that I had as a researcher in education and kind of apply them to this different realm. And so I sort of saw bookselling in many ways as a reprieve from the daily grind of like my other job. And a long time ago, I made the mistake of saying my real job, and I was quickly corrected. Now that I do this um, with greater frequency, I understand that bookselling is very much a full-time real job. It requires all the capacities, and knowledge and skills and dispositions. And so just really excited to be able to do this work with my wife. And I'll leave it also back over to Lizzie.
Okay, well, we're going to have Garrett do his, as he said, horse and pony show.
Okay. Well, this is going to be a little bit like an introduction to how CABS works, in that I'm going to have to kind of open up a fire hose on you and give you a quick rundown of everything we try to do in the 5 days we have to work together. But first, I really do have to thank the ABAA. And this isn't just lip service, because the seminar got started in 1977, and the ABA has been a supporter of the seminar for many years. It offered its first scholarship to the seminar back in 1992 and have been offering scholarships to the seminar ever since then. And that support is important because scholarship support means we can ensure broad access to a wide range of folks who are early career booksellers. And we're not giving those folks access just to what we're trying to teach them about bookselling, but also to the networks of colleagues that are what the trade depends on. The folks you meet in the classroom at CABS often go on to become the people that you do business with, that you see at book fairs, that you buy books from, that you sell books to, that you're going to turn to when you need help. Even if a colleague isn't someone that you're going to necessarily work with directly, you need to be able to trust them to be ethical and knowledgeable. And giving folks access to those networks of colleagues is one thing that we really appreciate the ABA's help in doing, and all of our scholarship providers. We're going to talk a bit more about scholarships and opportunities for scholarship support to come to the seminar probably later on toward the end of the brown bag today. But what do we do in a week at CABS? We take maybe the 100 to 200 years of experience that the faculty has, and we kind of compress it all down and we just jam it in your head. We take 5 days and we talk about everything that we can think of when it comes to trying to run a successful rare book business. We look at things from sourcing the material you're going to get, researching it, the physical description of books, books from the hand press era all the way through to the modern era. We cover working with bibliographies, online resources, putting together catalogs, selling to institutions, working with ephemera, vernacular manuscripts, archives, exhibiting at book fairs, considerations on running an open rare bookshop or mixed rare secondhand shop, marketing your book business, guarding yourself against forgery, fraud, fakes, stolen books, even the ins and outs of shipping rare books, which is a special passion of mine. Rebecca Romney, as has been mentioned, does an eye-opening lecture on the business end of bookselling that should have you opening multiple spreadsheets even as she's talking to you about the business. We want to see you succeed in the trade, because the trade only succeeds if our colleagues succeed. We dig into the ethical considerations of being a bookseller. We dig into the questions about the gray areas, the edges of being a bookseller, and the everyday nuts and bolts of how to take a book and how to sell it. Not just list a book, but to sell a book. You'll be working with small groups. Well, you'll be listening to lectures. You'll be listening to us talk about bookselling, but you'll be working in small groups with faculty members, doing hands-on exercises to handle, describe, research, and catalog material. Hand press books, modern books, ephemeral materials. This year, it's been rumored that there may be an off-the-books Brodart and Mylar and preservation session that goes on. And we might even see a return of the After Hours Underground Collation Club, which popped up last year as well. It's just 5 days of nothing except thinking about, talking about, and doing bookselling. The seminar knows now more than ever, there are countless ways to list books. We want to help you succeed in selling books. I guess that's the overview. I'll let Rebecca Romney maybe get into some of the nuts and bolts on what that might look like from her own experience, and we'll turn it over to some of the folks who've had to sit on the other side of my podium and listen to me talk about this. Thanks.
So I'll just start by talking a little bit about my personal experience coming to CABS first as a student and then as faculty. And even coming as a student, I came in a somewhat unusual position because I had been in the trade nearly a decade by the time that I came. And before I went, I felt a little bit like, is CABS for me when I already have a decade under my belt in the trade? I had been, managing galleries. I had been very extensively trained. I had felt like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And Heather was the one who said, trust me, I don't know that I can explain why you just need to go. You just need to do it. And so I went, and Heather was 100% right, as she usually is. And I found that the nuts and bolts are critical to what CABS offers. But for me, the most powerful thing was the philosophy driving CABS, which is not only the education of booksellers, but in many ways, the encouragement of building connections, building community, and broadening agency so that you as a bookseller can determine the best way for you to move in this space and to have the resources, both in terms of knowledge and where to find that knowledge, and in terms of context, like-minded people who handle similar things, people who handle entirely different things because you've run into a box of books in a subject you never handled before. All of those types of connections that you make, both sort of data and knowledge-based and personally, are really, to me, what CABS offers. I found it incredibly eye-opening, especially from the perspective of the generosity of spirit that I saw at CABS, not only from the faculty that instilled it in every lecture, but also from my fellow students. Every CABS year becomes a cohort where you get very proud of your year. You're like, oh yeah, CABS 2017, we had the best year. And every year says that. And it is true that some of my closest friends in the trade remain people that I first met at CABS. And that networking is professionally useful, but it is also professionally affirming because this business can be hard and we don't always know if we're making the right decisions. And to have the resources, both in terms of things like the notebook and the knowledge that you get, but also being able to pick up the phone and, call a friend of mine, call Will Baker, for example, who's part of my cohort. Shout out if you're here. If I'm able to do that because I've attended CABS, that is something that reaches far beyond the 5 days that we're actually in the seminar. And that is how the seminar is specifically designed, because we do only have 5 days. Garrett just ran through what we cover, and you can hear it's actually quite a lot. We try to cover sort of snout to tail every single aspect of what you expect in the antiquarian bookselling business. But we only have limited time. And what we really want you to do is have a sense of how to move forward. That's the vision that we hope you get by the end of the week. And then when I came on as faculty, it was with a belief in that vision and how critical it is to the trade as a whole that I wanted to be able to participate in that and to continue to provide those resources. And my role on faculty in particular, I feel, is very much aimed towards, I'm not the whimsical one. I'm the one who kind of comes down really hard at the seminar and says, no, you do need to make money if you want to sustain your business. And I have my own personal reasons for feeling that way. And one thing that I really appreciate about how the faculty has been built over the years and continues to evolve is that We are all meant to bring particular skill sets and specialties and perspectives so that the students who attend do get a variety of perspectives and do see in practice not only that there are many different ways to run an antiquarian book business, but that you can be collegial and cooperative and benefit from people who are entirely different from you, who run their business entirely different than you do. So the faculty in many ways tries to lead by being models in that as well as actively teaching it. I think that about covers what I would say about my experience and why I think it's valuable. Move it to Rebecca Baumann.
Oh my gosh, where to start? I'm listening to you talking about kind of things that surprised me, I think, because I didn't fully know what to expect going in. I was mostly excited to just get to hang out with booksellers for a week because I think booksellers are impossibly cool. And I wasn't quite sure because I'm like, yeah, I know how to collate books. I know how to describe books. Put a star by that right now. I teach history of the book. Like, is all this going to be repeat for me? One of the things that surprised me most was describing the books because, yeah, I describe books for a living every day. I've curated exhibitions, I teach classes, etc. But I learned real fast that describing a book to sell it is a very, very different practice indeed from the kind of descriptions that I do as a librarian, as a curator, as an instructor. The hook was not too hard for me because that's kind of what we do too. But the condition, I read catalogs all day, every Tuesday, all the time. I've read hundreds of thousands of bookseller descriptions, but trying to describe the condition myself, I'm like, this is quite hard. And it really helped me to look at the books with a completely different set of eyes, which I love. That's the same experience I've had at Rare Book School, like taking David Pearson's provenance class. When I came back to the Lilly, I said, I have been given a new pair of eyes. And I felt the same way about CABS. I see every book differently because I'm starting to see much more about it. I certainly couldn't, oh my God, pricing them. I'm just like, what? And I only have the context of pricing for an institution, but like my group, my table, and I love the way that CABS is set up with these kind of little cohorts within cohorts. So we have our own table, our own faculty member that we work with. So like I was very lucky. I was at Heather O'Donnell's table, which was the best table, of course. We had, I think, a Sinclair Lewis book or something that like you're not going to find an institution who's going to buy this right now. And I'm like, I have no idea how to price this. I don't know. I don't know who my audience is. I don't know who my market is. And I just learned so much in terms of helping put those pieces together of librarians, booksellers, collectors, things like that. Another thing I loved, just can't say how much fun and how educational it was, that hasn't been mentioned yet. At the very end, on the last day, there is an auction of books donated by the faculty members that the students can bid on to actually acquire. And seeing how that worked, getting to participate, which is something I don't get to do in my job because we actually have booksellers act for us at auctions. It's just a totally different experience than watching auctions online, which is what I'm used to. So that really hands-on, participatory, throw you right in there, but in a very supportive way, was just such a wonderful learning experience. And I think it helped me figure out, or it encouraged me to be more transparent in my communication with booksellers. I hate writing emails where I tell people, no, you've offered me this amazing thing. I love it so much, but the answer is ultimately no. And it really helped me be more transparent in explaining my no so that you all have the information, that it's not that you didn't do a great job describing it. It's because of budget, or it's because of this budget at this time, or we're not focusing on this collecting area or whatever. So I'm trying to be a lot more transparent and helpful because I think we need a lot more of that information flowing both ways. So that we we share the goal of getting this material into the world, right? And this helped me kind of figure out what kinds of questions booksellers have about institutions. So that was really helpful too.
Yeah, go for it. Alexis. Yeah, great.
So I had a very different experience, mostly because I had zero experience in the book trade other than just being one of those kids who like hid from their parents at the library when they were small. Um, as I had previously said, I was a teacher, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And kind of during that time, I was looking to try to figure out what I wanted to do. One of my friends from college is Erin Beth Beckwith, who was, I believe, with Rebecca at CABS.
Best year ever.
And I had Anna visit to DC. He sort of mentioned it, and I was like, man, I just love coming to your bookstore, Capitol Hill Books, by the way, in DC. It's so fun. It's like, I just love being here. And he was like, you should really look into going to CABS and doing this thing. And I was like, oh, that sounds crazy. I don't know. Sure. And he was like, you got to go. It's awesome. And so I really went in with zero knowledge whatsoever, but really in hopes that this was going to be like my next career. And if you ask Garrett, I'm sure he remembers me. I came in with some gusto. I just really wanted to learn everything I could possibly learn. And the minute any lecture was over, I had 800 questions. I got right up to the microphone and just asked everything that I had no idea about, which was pretty much everything. I didn't know what words meant that they were using. I had a book with me that just looked up words and descriptions. And so everything was so brand new and it was accessible and everyone was so kind, so helpful. Even, people who had been in the trade for years even came up and was like, if you have any questions, please let me know. Just the community that networks throughout the week, but even after, people checking in with me, making sure that if I needed any help, I was able to win the booth, I guess. It was kind of a scholarship thing at the end of the fair to the Brooklyn Antiquarian Book Fair, which I believe is no longer. Is that correct, everyone? I believe it is no longer. And so really, I think 6 weeks after CABS, we created a business and went to our first book fair as dealers. And all the dealers that I knew from CABS, all the faculty that were there came up to us, made sure that we were okay, had asked us any questions. They gave us tips of the trade, like here's what happens. People will put a check in a, or not a check, they'll put um their card in a book and they'll stick it under somewhere so you know that they want it. Just like all these little tidbits that we just had no idea were all told to us at CABS, but also, afterwards. And people were the community itself is just incredible. And I highly recommend it if for anything other than meeting people and being welcomed into this like fantastic community. Also, you might get to drop kick a box in Garrett's class for um, shipping. That was one of my favorite things. Um, oh, and one more thing that I thought was really is I think Rebecca Romney talked about it a little bit, is that you get these perspectives from so many different people. And one of the one of the funniest moments is usually when there is some sort of discrepancy between two, three faculty members, and one person will be talking, and then another person will be like, actually, that is not, wait, what? And then they literally have this wonderful discussion about who's right or how they do it. And it's really fun. Just are they arguing? It's like mom and dad are arguing. So it's very fun and very collegial, but also just really interesting to watch. So that's my take right now. Maybe I'll have some more later.
Hi, folks. So again, Alexis went in 2019, and I went for the first time in 2022 and completed the seminar in 2024. And I remember when Alexis was telling me about this in 2019, I approached it with quite a bit of skepticism, because of thinking about how accessible information is to us, via Google. And so I remember asking Alexa, I said, "What are you going to learn at this place that you can't just Google?" And I was like, why are you going to go away for a week, And I just wasn't convinced. And boy, was I wrong, right? There's nothing anywhere that can capture the vast expertise that the faculty bring, but also that your peers, your fellow attendees bring as well. And so I was transformed, and I think like Alexis, we tout CABS at every moment about how amazing it was in terms of it being this transformational moment. I think for me, one of the major takeaways was, CABS is really, you're going to learn so much, but the big takeaway was that it teaches you these like approaches to thinking like a bookseller, right? And so I think about Garrett has this wonderful series of lectures on kind of researching and how you go about researching specific things, and sort of having him guide you through his process, right? Of how he goes here and how he might go through, down this rabbit hole, but then how he might use this different database to get you to some place, all to tell you what you really have in front of you is a $20 pamphlet, right? But it's about the process and ways of thinking that I think were instrumental to me. Again, particularly because I do research, but in often in a different capacity. Um, I think Rebecca's Romney's Business Basics lecture was transformative because it helped highlight so many inefficiencies that we had in our business, right? And so it helped us think about, what is the turn rate? We've had this book on the shelf for 3 years. Maybe it's time to, reevaluate the cost, and not just doing that because you think it's the right thing to do, but doing that because the math says it's the right thing to do, right? And so those are the kinds of things that, you know, you you start to think about how this can apply to your own context, right? And so one of the things that was a takeaway is everyone has a different business model, right? Starts from a different perspective, starts from a different sort of point in terms of how much money they have to begin with. And so it's not about learning very like discrete sort of bits of knowledge, but it's really about being able to apply this knowledge base within your own context, right? So regardless if you're doing ephemera, regardless if you're doing, 18th century books or modern first or whatever it is, you can take these bits of information and apply them. The other thing I'll say that Garrett mentioned, but it's something that I just need to reiterate. I've never felt more welcome and sort of surrounded by people who genuinely want to see you be successful, right? Between your peers, between the faculty, the way they check up on you, the way they show up for you, the way they respond, and either through text message, CABS has a listserv, which is instrumental. You're stuck on something, you throw out an email, and you get like 18 replies back. And it's been exceptionally helpful to us. And the final thing I'll sort of say is I don't know where we would have been. I don't, you know, again, I do this part-time, for Alexis, it's a little bit more of like her full-time sort of position with Walnut Street Paper, but I don't know that we would have been where we are today without having attended CABS and having taken what we learned from CABS and applied it to our business. I think it propelled the business in exponentially. I think it propelled our knowledge base exponentially. It propelled our networks exponentially. Um, and again, just being able to converse with like-minded people and just have those opportunities to just learn. And I will say this other final thing, and then I really will stop. Um, as as an academic, one of the things that academics do is they always try to position themselves as the smartest people in the room, and that's infuriating. And academics don't lack humbleness, I'll tell you that, or don't have much humbleness. But being in that space, surrounded by the amazing faculty, so the Rebecca and Garrett and Lauren and Amir, and Heather and Maria and so many other people that I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Nobody is positioning themselves as like the know-it-all or the person who knows it all, right? And so, like Alexis was saying, sometimes the booksellers would be, or the faculty would be like, actually, I think this might, wait, hold on. Is that three-quarter binding? Wait a minute, hold on. And so, it's really interesting to see that there's always something to learn and take away and to continue learning, and that no one person in that room has all the answers. And so from that standpoint, I'm super thankful to be able to have attended CABS and take those things away. So thank you twice.
That was great. That was amazing, George. Thank you. So we are open for questions now. So if you have any questions to any of our panelists here, please put them in the box, type them in. I'll start with my first question because I went so long ago. Do you guys now do something on social media or doing so now we are, on Zoom, we are doing something different than what somebody was doing, 15, 20 years ago. Do you have a segment on how to deal with social media, how to tape yourself, how to, things like that?
So that's part of my marketing lecture. I don't get into the nuts and bolts, but I do talk about how to use it in order to position your business and to use it for branding, to use it for client acquisition and conversion. And so it plays with the other avenues of how you can use it, book fairs, et cetera. It's part of the marketing.
Okay. Garrett, can you say something about outreach initiatives and scholarships?
Sure.
So are scholarships available for just those in the US was another question that is tacked onto that.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn that around and assume that means if I'm outside the US, can I apply for a scholarship? And the answer to that is yes. Scholarships get a little, I won't say complicated, but there's just a lot of them. There's usually between about 22 and 24, give or take a couple on either side of that. Go to the bookseminars.com, look for the scholarships page. That's going to show you what's out there. Some of those CABS administers, you send your application in, we have a deadline, we evaluate, we pick some winners. Some are administered by outside folks. There's going to be the ABAA, there's going to be a chapter, the Northern California chapter is going to have a scholarship. There's going to be folks like supporters like Bibliopolis, ABE Books. There are targeted scholarships. There are folks like Lisa Undergraskin, Kenneth Rendell, Chuck Roberts of Wonder Books. They've all been generous supporters of scholarships in the past. There's a lot of folks out there who want to see you go to CABS. There are going to be shifting deadlines, shifting application procedures. Please check that scholarships page, bookseminars.com. Look for the scholarships. We want to see you. If you can't get to CABS this year, look at coming to CABS down the road. Scholarship winners are guaranteed a spot in the seminar. And that's important because since we opened registration on the 15th of January, our non-scholarship attendees were already waitlisted. We've only got sort of a limited space in that classroom, and we want to be able to give each student the attention from the faculty. So we're pretty tied up in there. So please go look at the scholarship opportunities. And if you've got any questions, you can talk to me. Maria Lynn is our scholarship coordinator. You're going to find her info on the website as well. Outreach, I guess as far as outreach goes, I mean, you can find any one of us on the internet. I mean, and you're going to find most of us at most book fairs, major book fairs. Got a question about CABS? Come up and ask one of us. We'd love to talk about nothing besides bookselling and about seeing more booksellers happen. So please find us, ask us. Outreach is a two-way street.
That's a That is good. Go to
Thanks.
come to a book fair. Rebecca, how about critical to have your own site brand to start or selling on the marketplaces like, social media, the difference between those two. Can you
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly to that. This is actually a big point I make in the marketing lecture, which is that on the one hand, selling on other sites, whether it's a place like ABooks or selling on Instagram, can be a really important component to your strategy because that is where the people are, and you go to where the people are in order to find people who will want your books. On the other hand, those sites are not in your control, and it is very dangerous to put all your eggs in one basket for a site that you do not control. So again, I go into this in the lecture, but essentially my recommendation is that if the type of material you handle and the type of people you want to reach are at particular venues, then yes, you should use those, but you should also be thinking very much, how can I get them onto my mailing list, onto my website? Because, RIP Twitter, RIP MySpace, we don't have control over these spaces. So you really want to get control of your audience if you can.
does somebody want to chime in about the difference between CABS and Rare Book School?
I can do that because I've been to Rare Book School a lot. Both are week-long intensive experiences. The vibe is very different. I have to say, I much preferred CABS, like so much more. It is a lot less formal. Rare Book School still has a dress code, which like you could ask me about that out. Like I have feelings about that. And you get the sermon by Michael Suarez to start things off. It has this very formal feeling to it. And you have different classes running at the same time. CABS is a community. I will also say, personally, as a neurodivergent person, this was a paradise for me. I've never been happier in my life, like in terms of just being able to vibe my own vibe, and learn cool stuff with cool people. It's really great. It is compared to Rare Book School, which is like super, super, super in depth on a narrow topic, usually for most classes, right? Like, the book in China or something, like you're focused on one part of the world. It's really intense. CABS is a speed run. You learn, I mean, we seriously, like, we would have like a chunk of the day that I'm like, oh, I took an entire semester long course on that in library school. There's no way they can cover this. And they did. I mean, it is a speed run. But that's a huge benefit, especially if you can't go to library school or you can't afford to go to 12 different rare book schools. Like you can't take Des Bib and history of the book and all the relevant courses. It's a speed run. And it's so supportive. That to me are the main differences.
Is there a online way to do CABS? Somebody asked that question. I think that's interesting.
There is not. We did do one online session during the COVID years, but we're looking at how we're going to expand our offerings as years go on. But look, this is a side gig for every one of us. We love what we do, and we're serious about the job that we're doing, but we are still limited by the time and effort that we've all got. So stay tuned. We're continuing to work on bringing CABS in an accessible and widespread way to more folks. So
Okay.
that's all I can really offer at this point.
Thank you. Finch is asking about an ethical question about ABA Books being owned by Amazon. How do you balance code of ethics against Amazon's negative actions against the independent bookseller industry? Is that ever talked about?
We do talk about that actually. I talk about it as an example in the marketing lecture because the databases like Abe and Biblio are part of the conversation. And I use an example of a couple different booksellers who specifically do not put their books on Abe for ethical reasons, for their personal feeling ethically that that's their line. And there are alternatives, first of all. You can recommend a place like Biblio if you do not want to recommend Abe. You can list on Biblio instead of Abe. And the other thing is that the main thing you have to consider is where you fall in your own terms of what my audience is, where they're based, and how I want to live my life. The thing about our business is that it is actually shaped around who we are as people. And we make a lot of our decisions about how we run our business. You know, we are the business owners, the buck stops with us. And so we build the business around us. And that's what allows you to say, I don't want to put my books on ABE. I'm going to put them only on Biblio. So that's a choice and alternative that you have. And then, you know, you get to decide how you're going to deal with the fact that you get different types of leads from that or different types of selling, or you might need to handle different types of material. You know, there are, of course, practical consequences to that, but you can say, well, I accept those because this is how I want to run my business. And that's one of the great things that you get with CAB is you get a lot of different options, different ways of thinking about what your business could be, depending on where your values are, what you want to do, what you specialize in, what matters to you.
Right.
And I just want to chime in real quick and say kind of some things related to what Rebecca was saying. A lot of what you learn at CABS is descriptive, right? It's not prescriptive. It doesn't, Rebecca and is doesn't give you like do this, do this, do this, do this, and you're going to be successful, right? So one of the things that I appreciate and kind of coming back to that social media question is Rebecca would talk to us about how she's leveraged social media. She would sort of talk to about some other booksellers who've leveraged social media. But the takeaway was here's an overview of what it could look like, but she never positioned it as if you want to be successful, you need to do this, right? And so it's like, again, does it work within your context? Does it work for you? Does it work for who you are in your business model? And so then coming back to like this idea of like A books, Walnut Street Paper, we list our stuff on A, but the majority of our books don't sell on A because that's not the kind of stock that we have, right? So instead of, again, at CABS, it was never about if you want to be successful, you got to list on all these third-party marketplaces. Most of our sales are direct to librarians, right, or institutions, or direct quotes to customers. So, that's what works for us. The point I'm trying to get at is, it's the good thing is that you get these sort of habits of mind, habits of thinking that you can then try to take away and as they work for you in your context. And I think that's a big takeaway for us at Walnut Street Paper.
That's a good one. Garrett, people
I
wanted
just wanted to, well, could I just also jump in real quick?
Sure.
Just to say, ABE Books sends two ABE booksellers, folks who list on ABE Books to the seminar each year. Those booksellers sit in our room, they listen to what we have to say, they interact, they learn, they take away the same lessons, I hope, that the other dealers do. What they choose then to do with that, who they choose to sell with, where they choose to sell, how they choose to move forward in the trade. We hope we've given them tools to make the decisions they want to make, to act according to their own ethical lights. So it's a big market out there. We try to support as many booksellers as we can. Lizzie, you had some other questions.
Yeah, no, a couple of people want you to chime in about being, specializing in a specific area, especially what you do in. So can you talk
Good
a little?
Lord, as someone who deals in 19th century American stuff, and I feel like I've got pantaloons on and a beard down to my knees. Most folks come in wanting to deal in what is often thought of as collectible modern firsts, and that's great. We've got folks on faculty who deal with this stuff at a high level, daily, and in ways that I can't even begin to understand. And that's fine because it's a big, diverse market and book trade out there. But we get folks who come in who deal in paper. We get folks who come in dealing with medievalism and medieval revival material. We get folks who come in without any kind of clear specialty at all. Specialization is one tool that you can have that's going to help you get ahead in the market, unless you just want to be a generalist. I can't really speak to why people become specialists. Look at Don Lindgren of Rabelais Books. Look at you, Lizzie. I mean, both of you have made conscious decisions coming out of what you know and what you know the market wants to pursue books on food and drink. I mean, this is a whole other hour of conversation we could have. But if you're here to if you've got some weird niche specialty, bring it to St. Olaf, bring it to CABS. We're gonna do what we can to help you succeed with it.
Can I add really quickly that this is very much something we talk about a lot at CABS, the
Yeah.
benefits between this is what you get being a generalist, this is what you get being a specialist, the pros and cons of each, and how then you get to kind of sit there and think, well, where do I fit on that spectrum?
Question. Go ahead.
I wanted to add a little bit to that, if that's possible.
Please do.
One of I remember this conversation, the like, well, what are you really gonna, sell? And I think one of the things is that we didn't know at first. We were just kind of like, hey, these are some cool old books and we're gonna try to sell them. And then as we went along, I think we started to gravitate towards buying books that we were interested in, and that's sort of where our business went. It wasn't about like, oh, we know the specific book is, worth a specific amount of money, but more about, oh, we really like this book, or this is really interesting to us, or this, ephemera is interesting, or we like this topic. And so that was sort of where we went. So I don't think you need to start with a specific genre that you're interested in, but maybe even as you go along, you notice what you like more and more as you become a bookseller. So
Good. Somebody was asking about kinds of questions they should think about before going to CABS. How would they prepare themselves?
I would say clear your schedule is one thing. It's intense. I was like in the middle of an exhibition and I brought all this work because I'm gonna finish my labels while I'm no, that bad. Clear your schedule. You're not doing anything else that week but learning.
And I would say just kind of having an open mind in the sense of there's going to be a lot that you don't know, um, and being willing to accept that there's a lot that you don't know, and also then being willing to ask questions and sort of kind of be in this state of limbo, right, for a bit as you're trying to figure it out and make sense of all the things that are going on at the same time. And, along that, one of the cool things about CABS is that it's not just theory. It's not just like people talking at you about these things. There's this like practical side to it, right? They have a whole, seeing the faculty unpack the entire reference library that takes up an entire wall, having them give you specific books that they tell you to go ahead and try to collate and catalog and describe and then sell, right? So there's also that application piece. So being, I guess, just priming yourself that there's going to be a lot that you don't know and being willing to accept that and then work through it.
One last thing I would add in terms of preparation, if you are very new to the secondhand antiquarian or book space, you might want to just give a quick look at Carter's ABC for Book Collectors for some vocab. Because we use a lot of that vocab. And one thing that we do at CABS, which I think is really fun and really useful, is we have what we call a 3D Carter, where there are lots of examples of what you're getting in the definitions in the books. So if you've come with a little bit of familiarity with Carter, and then you can look at the 3D Carter and actually interact with that, you'll get a lot more out of it if you have a little bit of that prep work. And Carter's ABC for Book Collectors is available online for free via iLab. Literally, you can, I think, Google Carter ABC for Book Collectors PDF or something, and it will come up via iLab. So it's available and accessible, and it's a great primer if you are totally new to the vocabulary before you come in.
Oh, that's a great to know that anybody can access us. That's fabulous. Let's do a wrap up here. We're running out of time. Does anybody have anything else they want to throw in there before we say goodbye? Garrett?
Look, bookselling isn't easy in the best of circumstances. And booksellers are my favorite people. If we run out of booksellers, I'm not going to have any friends. So I want you to consider a generous model of what it is to be a bookseller. I want to see so many different booksellers out there doing different, interesting, good, strong, ethical work. If you think I'm not a real bookseller, I want you to come to CABS and discover the ways that you already are a real bookseller and doing good work. And I want to help you. We want to help you. We want to join you and succeed in the rare book trade. Learning is a learning is a constructive thing. We literally work together to construct knowledge, and bookselling knowledge has been here for 400 years, and we're hoping to keep it going another couple. So if you've got any questions about the CABS Minnesota Antiquarian Book Seminar, all the folks here are happy to answer more. And the folks I'm going to see this summer, I'm already looking forward to it. Lizzie, thanks so much.
Just actually listening to all this just gave me that little like mini feeling of going to CABS. Like when I left CABS and there's, you do have that a bit of that imposter syndrome that comes along with, a lot of different things. And you go, oh, am I really this person or am I really a bookseller? And just listening to this has gotten me, again, it's such an exciting experience. And this is just a smidge of what you experience. So I can, it's the feel. I got the feel from this too. Rebecca, anything else? Rebecca's anything else to add before we wrap up?
There is a question that came up twice, and I think it's a really important question of whether there's a code of conduct.
We have been working on a code of conduct. There's not an official one. There is a campus code of conduct, and we enforce. We do enforce standards of respectful behavior among the attendees and the faculty. It looks like Maria's thrown something in the chat that'll illuminate that, this campus statement of values. Really, we want everyone to come to CABS. We want everyone to feel welcome at CABS. We want everyone to be able to safely come together and learn and discuss bookselling. If there's anything that stands in the way of that, talk to us and let's see what we can do to make it better.
Yeah, I mean, this panel is being, offered by the Gender Equity Initiative of the ABAA. So, we're open to everybody. So that's a definite.
Right. We're moving forward with bookselling and all that entails going forward. So, as I said, I'm hoping I can see folks this summer, and if not this summer, then at a book fair or another seminar down the road. Thanks, everyone.
Sure. We, by the way, this is going to be up on YouTube. So I think it's about a day or so that it becomes live. So if you've missed any part of it, I know everybody's work. Some people are working and had to come in and out. If you felt like you missed anything, you'll be able to see it on YouTube, on the ABAA YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks for everybody for their questions. And also, I'd like to say if anybody has any interesting topics they want to talk about, we are always interested in getting ideas. Just get in touch with Jen at ABA headquarters. We are always looking for different topics to talk about in having to do with the rare book world. So thank you.